Hi, welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be kind of a continuation of my last video, which was about my first year training away from home at ballet boarding school and my whole experience at the Herod Conservatory. If you didn't see that video, it is not like necessary to understand any context of this video, but if you do want to, if you're interested, I'm gonna link the video up here and you can check it out. This video is going to be about my first year training in Moscow at the Bolshoi Ballet Academy and also like the summer leading up to that, which is how I was accepted into the academy through the New York summer intensive the Bolshoi held every year. With the support and blessing of my family, I had made the decision to attend the Bolshoi Ballet Academy summer intensive program in New York to try to be accepted year-round into the Bolshoi Ballet Academy. So before we go any further in this story, I have to explain the NSLIY state program, which was part of my first year summer intensive experience. So the NSLIY National Security Language Initiative for Youth program pretty much just combines like Russian language with cultural immersion, as well as master classes from teachers at the Bolshoi Ballet Academy. Every year, a small number of the students from the New York Summer Intensive program were accepted into the NSLIY program, and I was one of them. That meant that my summer intensive was 3 weeks at the regular New York Summer Intensive, followed by 6 weeks in Moscow, which was fully funded by the state. So travel, food, and board costs, that was all covered. It was like a free scholarship, basically. In this program, we all lived in the dormitories at the academy. We would have intensive Russian language classes every morning, followed by ballet class, which was then followed by like character class or repertoire. On the weekends, we would go in pairs to selected host families to increase our immersion in the culture and the language. We also had like bigger group outings to see the city during the week. I applied for this when I had auditioned for the Bolshoi Summer Intensive, kind of to learn the language, get to know the culture a little bit. And I also wanted to have like more exposure to the teachers at the academy and also to the training, because even if I didn't get in for the year-round program, I absolutely was gonna just get as much as I possibly can out of this summer intensive program. But yeah, okay, back to the story. So in the early hours of July 2011, me and my dad drove through the mountains 4 hours to get to the biggest airport in my state so I could fly off and start my adventure. I was like really excited, but I also had super high expectations of myself. I knew that this was probably my like make it or break it moments. The summer intensive in New York City was really different than the summer intensive at Herod. In the dorms in the city, we had just a lot more freedom and personal responsibility, which I found really exciting. Our classes were actually held where NYCB and SAB have their classes and rehearsals during the year. Every class was taught by teachers from the academy, and there was a translator in every class to help them out and explain corrections to us. We had classical ballet, character dance, pas de deux, and repertoire, which were all things that I had studied at Herod the year before, so I wasn't like out of my depth. I do remember being extremely stressed out all the time. The stakes were really high for me, and every day felt like an audition to me. I took it extremely seriously. One of the most important parts for me of like these first 3 weeks was the initial Russian language classes. They were available to all students who wanted to take them, who were part of the New York Summer Intensive. We didn't really end up learning much past like the basics, because Russian is like super hard and there's a lot of grammatical things that are difficult to pick up in like a fast time. I like really appreciate that they were open to all students who really wanted to like immerse themselves more or kind of try and understand more of what their teachers were telling them. After the 3 weeks were over in New York, me and the 11 other students who were involved in the NSLIY program hopped on a plane and we flew off to Moscow. Our time in Moscow that summer was really fun, and I was super excited to be able to experience like kind of what life might be like for me if I moved there. We stayed in the academy dorms, like I said before, 3 girls to a room. So typically our mornings, we'd have breakfast in the academy cafeteria, followed followed by like intensive Russian language classes. Then we would start our dance classes for the day. At some point during the summer, a young choreographer visited our classes, and he ended up choosing me and 3 other girls for extra repertoire classes. He had created solos for us from Prokofiev's The Seasons, and we rehearsed them throughout the intensive before filming them at the end. He invited a photographer at some point as well, and we all received the photos and videos of us dancing, which was a really nice touch. Unfortunately, the video has been lost to time, so on the weekends we would stay with host families, and I had some incredible families. I did hear a couple of funky stories from other girls about their families, which is not funny, but it was unfortunate. I was really lucky to have had just amazing host families the entire time. We also went to go see a couple of ballet performances as a group when I was there in the summer. It was the first time in my life that I was on the edge of my seat for a dance performance, and it had just a profound effect on like how I viewed performing, and it just inspired me to work even harder. So after the summer was over, I returned back to my little town and the waiting game began. They didn't tell you immediately if you got accepted. Like after the summer intensive program, you had to wait for a physical letter from them. I don't even know if they would send you a letter saying you weren't accepted. So it was kind of just like will I get a letter or won't I? So life was kind of on pause. One day in the fall, my family decided to go on a hike together up to this like little lake in the mountains. We got to the lake and we all sat down to eat lunch, and my mom pulls this envelope out of her bag, and it was a letter that had come in the mail, and I got in. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the academy now, like the layout, the schedule, all that great stuff. If this is not interesting to you, or like maybe you already know about it, you can just skip to the next timestamp, because this is just like contextual support for the rest of the story. The academy is one big, giant, gray, square building. It was pretty close to the center, but still out enough so that we were in a pretty quiet neighborhood. In the school itself, well, I'll just go by floor. So on the first floor of the academy, of course, there's the entrance. On that floor was also a gymnastics studio where we would have like gymnastics or stretching class. There was also a school stage on that floor. The school actually has a theater like inside of it. Fully backstage, stage, audience, like orchestra pit. On the first floor as well were all of the offices. So where all of the directors or anyone who was associated with administration of the school, their offices were all also on the first floor. The school doctor was also on the first floor, and that was kind of like a fully functioning clinic, I would say. There were doctors who were there 24/7, as well as like examination rooms. There's rooms that are called like isolation, where they would send you if you got sick so that other kids wouldn't get sick. And it's not as scary as it sounds. They would like take care of you and bring food down there for you, but you would just have to stay in there without much contact to like anyone else. The cafeteria was also on the first floor. I think that's it for the first floor. Okay, so the second floor is just all ballet studios. And there is the classic green carpets, of course. There's big studios and small studios, heaters that run around the entire perimeter by the windows. All the floors in the school are heavily raked, so that means they are on a slant down towards the mirror. The stage is also raked. Like all the stages are raked. The third floor was the academic area, so all the rooms where kids would take academic classes, as well as the dormitory area, where some full-time Russian students lived, but it was mostly international students. The dorm area had the boys' hall, the girls' halls. Of course, men and women's bathrooms were also separate. There were 2 general halls that were like giant open spaces with rugs. One of which had a TV and was like close to the place where the house moms sat, and the other one was further down the hall, and that's where we would have like, sometimes they would have a discoteca like for Christmas or another holiday, or we would sit there and stretch or do our homework. The school also had a basement, but we were very rarely down there. It was kind of like unfinished, like there was like dirt down there. There was like one little pathway that you could walk. Rooms that were down there were the photographer, the school principal photographer, his office was down there, I think, as well as the room where you would get your bed sheets and stuff. There was like one time, I think a month, that we would like switch out all of our bed covers and they would give us fresh ones down there. So you would just take your dirty ones down and they would give you fresh ones. The school system at Bolshoi is broken up into 5 classes and 3 courses. Each class has 2 separate groups of girls and boys called A and B group, and each course has 3 separate groups of girls and 2 separate groups of boys. So A group, B group, and then there is another group called E group, or I group, but in Russian it's E, so I'm gonna say E. The only difference between A group and B group was different teachers. There's really no other difference, and I think that it was set up that way. Like there's no favorite, it's not like A is better than B. Like it's set up that way, I think, mostly because there's a lot of students, and so that each student gets like much more attention because the classes are smaller. As you might have guessed, E stands for international. There's only an international group of girls. There is no international boys group. Boys are always integrated immediately into either boys group A or boys group B. The girls group E is obviously international, and that's where they usually put international female students, but there are always exceptions, of course. I was immediately put into first course E. My year was a little bit different than usual though, because there was no B class, and I to this day do not know why there was no B class. There was just girls group A, boys group A, girls group E. So in my year, girls E group was basically treated as the parallel to the girls A group, like how group B would be treated. I have never heard of that happening before. It may have, but it just was kind of an anomaly. There's also kind of like an in-between class, which is between 5th class and first course, and this class is called stagiaire, and stagiaire is basically like an in-between class before integrating students into the first course. So the classes that I had, Russian language in the morning, then ballet class afterwards, followed by one or more of the following classes. So gymnastics, character dance, historical, modern, acting, repertoire, pas de deux, or stage makeup. My Russian language was very basic at this point, so I could not take regular school subjects in Russian. So I did online school during the times that they had academics during the day. We were served 3 meals a day at the cafeteria in school, as well as like little desserts or some snacks that were like always available to us. There was always some kind of meat, some sort of like pasta or grain, and salads every day, albeit they usually were a little bit greasy, but okay. On a weird extra little note, there weren't any knives for some reason at the cafeteria, so we would all have to kind of use forks and spoons to cut the meat, which is kind of random. We had health checkups 4 times per year. They would check everything from if our spine was straight, our heart rate, our teeth, and we would get weighed. Weight was important. If you weighed too much, you wouldn't be able to take pas de deux class. They could also deduct points from your exam scores. Okay, so this is the Bolshoi Ballet Academy height to weight chart, which I took directly from the Academy student contract page on their website. It's exactly the same as it was when I was there. So for my height, I was supposed to weigh around 45 to 46 kilograms. So I can confirm that I was definitely over that most of my time there. And I have to say that I didn't have any issues taking pas de deux classes. They never told me to stop or anything like that. It's so difficult when you're a teenager and your weight is naturally fluctuating so much. I don't know anyone who kept a stable weight throughout those 3 years that I was there. So on the weekends or after our classes, we could take a propusк, which was a little paper with time written on it, which was how much time you could be out of the academy building, and it had to be confirmed by one of the dorm mothers or the women who were working there in the dorms like 24/7, and you could go outside for that set amount of time. Usually we would just go to this little grocery store nearby or Starbucks Starbucks or another cafe for some internet because the internet there was wild. Yeah, we'd also go to like dance stores in the city, Sancha or Grishko, to pick up supplies. And the city center was also really close by. Kind of an interesting anecdote from school. I don't know if this still exists there, but I'm pretty sure it does. A popular place to go to eat on the weekends or even weekdays, I guess, if we were feeling like going out. It is a popular restaurant chain, or at least was at that time, that looks like a cow on the outside, and it's called Moo Moo. And on the inside, it is a buffet style restaurant that had really good prices and the food was definitely not bad. They had everything from different Russian dishes to sushi, and it kind of had like a tavern-y vibe on the inside, like wooden tables and chairs. And we spent a lot of time at Moo Moo, which is kind of funny. Another really random kind of crazy fact from school is that there were actually students from North Korea studying there. I have no idea how that happened, but it is a fact that there were students from North Korea there. And the craziest thing about that situation is that we had a common language, which was Russian. During Christmas break, not a lot of students stayed in the dorms. A lot of them went home, and I was one of the people who did not go home for Christmas break. I just stayed in the dorms for pretty much the entire break. It was like me, my good friend David, and kids from North Korea. So 3 of my Christmases in my life have been spent with North Koreans. So it took me a while to get to Russia, actually, because the visa process was really long and really difficult. I got set back a couple of months, which was really hard for me because I was like checking the internet and school there had already started from the 1st of September. I could see the photos of everyone like starting school, and I couldn't do anything to like get there any faster. Once the visa was finally ready, it was actually November. So once I arrived at the academy, the first thing I had to do was get a health check at the little like medical center in the school. And immediately multiple nurses confirmed that my throat was red. So instead of going up to the dorms and like getting calibrated, I had to stay in the isolator for like 3 days. That was kind of hard because I was still pretty like shy to speak Russian to them. It was hard for me to like ask for what I needed, like water. There were a couple of younger girls who were also in my isolation room, little Russian students. They spoke to me so often that I started also speaking in Russian. It was probably terrible, to be fair, but we could communicate with each other. And one of those girls is actually a prima ballerina at the Bolshoi now, so that's wild. So after my stay in the isolator was over, I was able to start classes and like live in the dorms. Ballet class was of course very challenging. I was super happy that I had had that year at Herod to really get the base core Vaganova technique, because without that it would have been so much more challenging for me. I don't think that I would have been there realistically. Character class was really fun, but this was the first real time that I had started doing full like character bar. So character class is structured very similarly to ballet class there. You do a character bar, which includes like pliés and tendus, even there's like adagio and grand battement, but in a character style. And so a lot of times the different exercise will have different styles. My teacher was incredible. She had been a soloist character dancer at the Bolshoi Theater during her career. She was just a really inspiring person, so strong, and like she had so much that she wanted to share with us, so that was awesome. Pas de deux class, we had it much more regularly than I had it at Herod. It was really challenging, especially because of the floor being raked. Pas de deux class is in first course. That's the first time students really have pas de deux class, is first course. The combinations were very hard. My teacher was very strict, but I felt like he gave us things to challenge us, and he wouldn't have done that if he didn't think that we could do it. A lot of times we were like, what are we doing? But in all honesty, that definitely helped push us out of our comfort zone, and it also helped us and the boys start to like learn how to work together. Another class that I had never had before that was extremely important to me, and I am very passionate about about this was acting class, which was especially the first year not rooted in like classical ballet acting or like mime. It was a lot centered on improvisation and much more like, dare I say, human acting, like regular acting. Our acting teacher was crazy and amazing and gave us these wild exercises to stop us from being embarrassed, to just go for it and like just jump into any different kind of role or experience. We also had modern dance class and historical dance class. Modern dance class, there was a lot of contact improvisation, or we would do different exercises or modern pieces. And historical dance class was very old style of dance, very little movement. For instance, in the upper body was a lot of like épaulement, a lot of little footwork. Another class that I had in Russia actually for the first time was gymnastics class. This class was super important to me. I had been looking forward to it because as a child in America, I was pretty crunchy. I didn't really get my splits as fast as other people. I just wasn't as flexible. A lot of the exercises that we did in gymnastics class are not exercises that anyone would ever do, really. I mean, maybe if you're in a super like Russian school in America, but in a typical school, you would probably never do any of the exercises that we did in gymnastics class. But I felt it was really important for me. A lot of the students who are Russian students in the school have been taking gymnastics classes since they were very young and therefore are very flexible and have specific like muscles built up by the time they go to ballet school at like age 11. And so for me, I felt like I was kind of behind. Ballet, the constant pursuit of perfection. Here that is amplified and I am feeling the vibrations emanating around me. There is so much pressure on us to be the absolute best we can be simply because we are not Russian and not born with perfect facility. Pressure to be skinny, competition for attention in class, and the constant looming dread of not achieving enough. Here I feel continuously tested, which is really good, but at the same time so stressful. Every day I face 1,000 distractions and every moment there's another vital choice I have to make. The choices are so simple and yet so hard. Sometimes all the odds seem to be against me. I feel like even though we are constantly pursuing and reaching to be perfect, we're all secretly hoping to evade it. The goal is to get a little taste of it, not a bite, but enough to leave the taste in your mouth so that you ravenously crave it. Because if we ever finally reach the peak of achievement, if we ever are the absolute certain best dancers that we can be, everything will cease to be interesting. What is a catch without a chase? In December, I was still getting adjusted to my classes, but I was already fully like in the flow of daily classes and hard work, and it was super intense. I was loving my classes and my teachers and really trying to like soak up everything that they said and apply it to myself. My incredible ballet teacher, Irina Mikhailovna Pyatkina, took me aside one day and told me to come to extra repertoire classes with her. There was going to be a school concert, and she started preparing me and a couple other girls from our class to audition for the school concert. So I began rehearsing with her the fifth variation from the ballet Paquita. We had a break after Christmas, and while most kids staying in the dorms went home, I stayed there. It was just too far for me to go home for such a short time, so I spent Christmas in Russia. I'm getting stressed out. The gala and our exams seem to be coming up so fast, and I don't feel ready just yet to handle them. I have this sort of feeling that I'm never going to be truly ready for those things, though. I'm going to just have to suck it up and do my best. What else is there to do? When classes came back in January, we learned that a student from the teaching program at the school, because they also have a school for teachers where teachers can get qualified to teach. A teacher from the teaching program was going to be using our class as her final exam. So teachers training in that program are required to like show an exam class that a commission of judges observes that should include like all the important things that your students need to have learned by the end of that specific year of the program. So she observed us in class and then like slowly started to show us combinations that she had made up like for us to learn under the watchful eye of my teacher, of course. And she put a really big emphasis on jumps, as well as like the longest grand allegro I've ever done in my life. So it was really challenging. By the time February came around, we had already begun rehearsing our variations for the concert audition on the school stage, which was super raked and terrifying for me. Sometimes students from other classes would like wait around in the wings and watch us dance, which stressed me out a little bit. Rehearsals were usually in the evenings after long days and intense classes for the student teacher's exam. Her exam was on Valentine's Day and it went really well. My teacher was really proud of how we did, and once we finished, we all knew that we would now be like laser focused on our own exam preparations for later in the spring. Our character class also began preparing a piece for the March concerts, which we started to do every single class because it required us to be like really together and it was super precise. So the student concerts were in March, which meant the auditions for the student concerts were also in March. And we were so nervous, me and the other two girls from my class who were auditioning with solos. We waited and we waited, and finally the results came out and we all got in to perform in the concert. Today was the day results of the auditions for the concert were supposed to be posted on the board. We were all nervous and excited, and we all eagerly awaited when it would be official. Before ballet class, nothing was there, so we figured that after class we would probably find out. Our teacher told me, Jordan, and Elisabetta to come to rehearsal at 3 for our variations. We stayed hopeful. Maybe this was just in case. When we all got into the room and warmed up, our teacher told us that we 3 had all gotten into the concert. This year, they are doing 2 concerts. One this week and one next week. We'll be doing variations in the second one and our character dance in the first one. Jordan and I were so excited we were smiling for the rest of class. I guess that year there was like 2 concerts. One was one week and the second was the next week. Our character dance also got through, and that was like my whole class of girls, which was really exciting. Our character dance was in the first concert, and then our solos were in the second concert. We prepared by taking bar and little jumps in center. Then our teacher told us to go get our hair and makeup touched up and meet her down by the stage to get our costumes on. She gave me some white flowers to put in my hair, and Jordan got a big purple rose. When we were all ready, we went down for costumes. I got into my white tutu, Lisa into her blue one, and Jordan into her dress. My teacher from the summer, Putashkina, helped me put on the tutu and told me not to be nervous when I got on stage. We also ended up dancing our character dance for a separate concert, which was not long after the first 2, that involved Academy students as well as like visiting Japanese students who were at the school. So that was fun. But around this time, our exam prep had really ramped up and we were working on finishing the class exercises so we could finally start doing full runs of our exam class. By April, we'd started fully running our exam class a couple times a week to build up stamina and also to prepare ourselves psychologically. It was really heavy work and my foot started to hurt. I ended up going to the school doctor. She gave me some cream and excused me from taking classes for a few days, but of course I still attended all of my classes and did my arms full out on the side while sitting. As the days pass here and turn to weeks and months, I feel more and more swept into the same pattern. I catch myself settling for it's just a bad day or there's always tomorrow to do better. I realize every time that I need to work every day here like it's my last. Learning from my past, nothing is forever, and you never know how long you are going to have a good thing. Every day here is a huge gift, and I need to be grateful for every moment here, every breath, every class. Exams are coming, and pretty soon there will be no more excuses, only pass and fail. No luck about it. I have to force myself to do my best every day, and then I can give my all in exams. So me, Jordan, and Elisabetta, who are the other 2 girls from my class who also did solos, we were usually like together in class in combinations and at the bar. My modern teacher held us back after class one day and told us to learn the contemporary piece that the graduating class was going to be doing on Bolshoi Theater as part of their graduation concert. We were like, yeah, of course we'll learn it. And she told us to start coming to rehearsals. Around a week later, the 3 of us were called down to the office. It turns out that we were gonna dance in the graduation performance on the historical stage of the Bolshoi Theater. They called me, Jordan, and Elisabetta downstairs to 5th cabinet. This would normally mean something was wrong with our visa or health insurance. So we 3 hustled downstairs and went straight to the office. When we got in, the woman called us over to her and told us 3 that we'd been picked to perform the contemporary piece on Bolshoi Theater in June, and not to go home until we'd performed. Can you believe it? I'm going to dance in the graduation performance on Bolshoi Theater. That was like my biggest dream, and it was just the first year that I was there, so I was freaking out. In May, we had to start looking for our exam leotards for our whole class, which is a lot harder than it sounds. Each teacher wants something different. You can't have the same exam leotard for every single class, so we just scoured the racks at Sancha and at Grishko and finally came up with these like baby pink leotards and skirts for classical ballet and just black on black for all the rest of the classes. Classic. At the end of the month, we ended up having our first exams, pas de character, and acting. During my pas de exam, which was like the first dance exam that I had ever taken, it was especially stressful because the day before the exam, the boy who was my partner had gotten sick. So I ended up having to do the exam with two different partners who were not people that I had been practicing with, which was very unfortunate. We had big height differences, and Grishko had ended up being all out of my shoes. So I ended up dancing in my exam with dead point shoes. Yeah. In the end, it all went pretty okay. I got a pretty good grade, but I was disappointed that I didn't do my very best. The second exam was character. It went really well, and I wasn't half as nervous because character is so much fun. I think it's always the least nerve-wracking of any of the exams. Our whole class got top marks, and I was so proud of us. Our third exam was acting, and it was also just a ton of fun. Our teacher was incredible. She had never been a ballet dancer, actually. She only was an actress. She did a great job of getting everyone out of their shells in like super weird, random improvisation exercises. I think acting should be part of every single ballet curriculum at every ballet school. After our first three exams, we had our first performance on Bolshoi Theater in May, which was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. Just being in the historical theater is something that I had only ever dreamed was something that could happen, especially when I first went there because it was under renovation during the summer when I had visited. Our teachers were super happy with us, and I was just so proud to be there. It was such an incredible way to finish off the year. June brought our ballet and historical dance exams, as well as a couple more performances on Bolshoi Theater. So ballet was definitely my most stressful exam. It was one of the most terrifying things I have ever done. All in all, it went smoothly. I got top marks. I also learned that I got like top marks for the first half of the year, as well as in repertoire. We also had our exam for historical dance, which was definitely my worst subject. I couldn't coordinate it. It was really hard for me. I don't know. I was struggling so hard in historical dance. I did pretty well, but it wasn't like, definitely was not my best, and I was pretty disappointed. But unfortunately, that was our only year with historical dance. So the rest of the performances on Bolshoi Theater were a huge success. We ended up having shows on the small stage, in the small theater, and also on the historical stage. We got to use the dressing rooms of like the normal dressing rooms of dancers in Bolshoi Theater, which was also just like, I never thought that I would be there, where I'd seen so many of my idols in so many videos on YouTube preparing their makeup for a show, and now I was there like preparing my makeup for a show. Given it was very cringy makeup because I was 15 years old and had no idea how to do stage makeup, but there I was doing my cringy makeup in Bolshoi Theater. I had never been in such a huge theater or on such an enormous stage. There are multiple balconies when you look out into the audience, and it's always full of people. When audiences are very happy or really excited, they clap and stomp their feet in synchronized rhythm, which is really an experience that you don't get anywhere else. It was insane, and it was wonderful, and it was one of the best memories I have. Finally, exams and performances were over and life calmed all the way down. We had a little bit of time after everything finished to just kind of explore the city and enjoy going to see some more ballet performances. At the end of June, I finally flew home, but I was only at home for like, I don't even know how long, maybe a few days, maybe like a week, but it was a super short time before I ended up flying out again to the Bolshoi summer summer intensive program in New York to prepare me for my second year at the academy. So generally my first year at school was really hard, especially being away from my family. It was my first Christmas that I had spent away from home and also my first birthday that I had spent away from home. So that was tough, but it was definitely super rewarding and I never regretted it for a second. I absolutely loved it there and I could not wait to come back for the next year. I know that there's like a stereotype of Russian schools being really strict and like very harsh, and of course I can only speak to my own experience, but my experience was very different. The training was very disciplined and very structured, and the teachers really expected a lot of us, but I think that we all kind of knew that that was like par for the course and that was what we all kind of signed up for. The discipline and the thick skin that I grew there just because of the pressure and the like strict, not cushy environment. It's really been invaluable to me in my career as a professional and taught me like true work ethic and like the value of hard work. Generally, my entire experience there was very positive. My experience with my teachers was extremely positive. Classes were definitely challenging. Of course, in the ballet school, every different level that you're at, there's a specific like curriculum in terms of technique for that level, depending on each class. And so by the end of the year, of course, our exams were like a culmination of everything we'd learned. So typically we would spend the first half of the year kind of like getting to know the different exercises. Each day or each week, we would have different classes and we would try different things and work on the new things that we learned. And then, of course, the second half of the year was more geared toward exam prep. Each exam was a nonstop full class of that specific subject. So ballet class, for instance, the exam, it was an entire bar that we'd learned with short breaks in between a couple of exercises for us to breathe and get ourselves together. Then we would have a full center along with big adagio, combinations from the corner, and jumps. And then we had maybe like 15 minutes to put our point shoes on, put a tutu on, or I mean, in first course, we just stayed in our skirts and then come back into the studio and do a full point class. So that starts with little releves in the center, all the way up to big turns from the corner, and other like larger steps. And in the end of the ballet class, usually the entire group, like the entire class, would have a final exercise all together. It's very tough. It's over an hour and you're basically performing a ballet class for a panel of judges that sits in the front of the room with papers. So on the judges' papers during the exams, they have each student's name and where they stand on the bar just for reference to get to know, like, so they can also remember like who they're judging when they're counting up the points, I guess. So on this paper, they had your name, your height, and your weight. And I guess they took all of that into consideration when giving you your final score. Wow. So this took me forever to put together, but I'm so happy that I finally did. And I'm really happy to finally be able to speak in detail about my entire training journey. Thank you all again for your wonderful comments and suggestions. Definitely leave some more down below, along with if there's anything specific you wanted to know about, or if there's anything that you'd like to hear about in my next video, which is going to be about my second year at the academy, then definitely tell me in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.